Welcome to Good for Bitcoin, a weekly show recorded live every Friday, where we recap the top events of the week and talk about everything that is good for Bitcoin. If it's built on Bitcoin, then it's good for Bitcoin. Let's get started.
Content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and do not reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, or company. We encourage you to conduct your own research and consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Good for Bitcoin, your weekly pulse on Bitcoin innovation. My name is Brandon. Unfortunately, Kate is under the weather, so she's not going to be joining us today. So you are stuck with me on this fine Friday. Pretty crazy markets right now. Bitcoin dipped below 60K this morning. Honestly, it's I didn't expect us to ever get to these numbers again. So we're, I think, a little bit above 60 now, but we will see how things hold. Crypto fear and greed is in extreme fear territory, of course. And crazy price. On the 7-day, Bitcoin is down more than 21% in the past 7 days. So pretty crazy stuff. We are live on goodforbitcoin.com. Thank you to everybody that tunes in live. We stream again every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And of course, we got to talk about all the companies buying and selling Bitcoin this week, starting with Strive. They bought 2,500 Bitcoin. They now hold a very even 19,000 Bitcoin. ProCap Financial, which is Pomp's company, sold 52 BTC. They now hold 5,405 BTC. Orange BTC, which is the largest Latin American treasury company, bought 20 Bitcoin. They now hold 3,762 Bitcoin. Capital B bought 4 BTC, now hold 3,139. Smarter Web Company bought 9 Bitcoin. DDC Enterprise bought 90 Bitcoin, and Bitcoin Treasury Corp, which is a Canadian Bitcoin Treasury company, sold 3.64 BTC, now holding 752 Bitcoin. So lots of buys, lots of sells this week. I feel like that's a lot more public companies than we normally cover on the show. But of course, the elephant in the room is Strategy. They sold 32 BTC this week for $2.5 million. And it is quite the catalyst for, I think, Bitcoin selling off. At least that's what a lot of people are kind of blaming Saylor for kicking off this latest 7-day run of Bitcoin dropping. But, it's still quite a small drop in the bucket compared to their overall Bitcoin holdings. This transaction is roughly 0.004% of their overall BTC holdings. And 2 weeks ago, they bought nearly 25,000 Bitcoin. So again, very, very, very small relative to things. And I think come Monday, we might even see, Saylor buy more, right? But they have not bought Bitcoin in 2 weeks. So quite the dry spell for them. I think the one thing that was annoying though with the sale is, every week Saylor posts when they buy and, talks about it. And when the news came out this week that that Strategy had sold some of their Bitcoin, Saylor didn't really acknowledge it on socials, didn't tweet about it. There wasn't like any sort of justification for why they did it, other than, the fact that they did talk about it a few weeks ago, that they, might do it in the future. I remember several years ago when Tesla sold a large amount of their Bitcoin, they came out saying that they were like testing liquidity and just making sure that, they would be able to sell it. And I think that kind of tracks generally with, with what Strategy is doing. They're certainly not reversing course and trying to just sell off all their Bitcoin week over week like they've been dollar cost averaging. They're not going to be dollar cost removing or whatever the term is for that. But yeah, it was just kind of a quiet SEC filing. So for me, that was a little annoying just to see Saylor just being quiet about the whole thing. But their average purchase price for all of their BTC currently is 75,000, a little over 75,000, meaning at current prices, with Bitcoin being at around 60K, they're pretty underwater right now at current prices, and that is generating just a ton of FUD on the timeline against Strategy. But MSTR and STRC both have taken dips this week. MSTR was down over 13% when I checked yesterday. STRC also trading below $100. Some see this as an opportunity though, especially for STRC. If you think that it might go back up to the $100 kind of on par that they target, that would be an even higher rate of return than their advertised 11.5% return. So not financial advice, but that's just what I'm seeing some people talk about. So moving on to some other news, Lava has released their Lava credit card, which I thought was very cool. This allows you to earn up to 5% back in Bitcoin on every purchase. That 5%, I guess, is only for approved Lava merchant partners, and I was unable to source any of these on their website. So not too sure about that 5% number, but the good news is that users in the US at least earn 3% back in Bitcoin, which is very good. 3% is a really good rate. And if you are outside the US, it's a 1% APY, which I think is still really good compared to like non-US credit cards. Something about the US credit cards get a lot more fees, or a lot more rewards than outside of the US. There's no annual fee, no foreign transaction fees, and it's a Visa, which for me is also a huge plus. But it is a little different compared to, I guess, a standard credit card. It sort of operates as what's called a secured credit card. It's kind of like a debit/credit hybrid. So you're spending on your credit card using the dollar balance that's in your Lava account. And this dollar balance can be funded through either like a standard bank transfer. It can be funded with stable coins or by using their Bitcoin-backed loans product to function as a Bitcoin line of credit. And that aspect, I think, is really interesting. So, let's say you have, just for simple math, let's say you have, $100,000 in Bitcoin in your Lava account, and you want to just have like a $10,000 spending limit, right? Really easy and really, risk minimized, I guess, in terms of LTV to get out, a $10,000 loan against your Bitcoin. That's a 10% LTV, right? That's like very, very safe from a loan perspective to do. And then you can, spend against that on a credit card basis. So pretty interesting stuff. We'll have to maybe see if we can get somebody from Lava on the show. That would be cool to do in the future, but pretty interesting there. And then lastly, I think this is the thing that's been kind of dominating the headlines over the past 24 hours is this thing with Zcash. Zcash was hit with a double spend bug. And here's a little bit of timeline of events. There's this thread from Zuko, who's the Zcash founder, that talks about it. And I'm just going to read a little bit of what this thread said. On May 29th, this security researcher named Taylor Hornby discovered a critical counterfeiting vulnerability in Zcash's Orchard pool. Taylor disclosed the vulnerability to Zcash Open Development Lab, who coordinated an ecosystem-wide emergency response to fix the vulnerability, which was completed on this Tuesday, June 2nd. The vulnerability was real and it was exploitable. It could have been exploited to undetectably create an unlimited amount of counterfeit Zcash within Orchard. And because of the privacy properties of Orchard and of Zcash at large, there's no way to cryptographically prove whether the vulnerability was exploited before it was remediated. So that's definitely what's causing a lot of fear. Zcash obviously being a privacy coin, it's impossible to, if somebody minted or not, or used this exploit or not. And because it can't be, I guess, proven at this point, there's a lot of people selling. So people like, big proponents of Zcash, like Arthur Hayes, have already dumped their position entirely. And he said that he might get back into it, if things stabilize. But right now it's really hard to justify because the main value prop of Zcash is, privacy, but you can't have both private transactions and the ability to, mint unlimited transactions because like, who knows what the value of coins are if you have those two properties together. So Zuko did say that there is a network upgrade that can be deployed to protect users and improve the integrity of the Zcash supply. But the crazy part of all of this is that the security researcher, Taylor Hornby, he used Anthropic's Opus 4.8, so Claude, the latest Claude model, to find this vulnerability. And Claude was able to find it, I guess, 25% of the time in prompting. So yeah, it was easily findable with Claude, and it's just really crazy. So Zcash has dropped over 30% on the news, but it is still up on the 3-month chart. So it's dropped quite a bit, like everything has, I guess, this week, but it is still up overall over the past several months. So pretty interesting stuff. Just some quick headlines. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that the U.S. government has frozen bank accounts of Iran's leaders and seized more than $1 billion in stablecoins from them. We've talked about this a few times on the show over the past couple of months with this war going on in Iran. And then initially they were declaring, or they were demanding like stablecoins as like a toll. And we were saying, that doesn't really make a lot of sense because stablecoins are so easily seized. And then it seems like they maybe potentially pivoted to Bitcoin because obviously permissionless and decentralized and all that good stuff that we love Bitcoin for. So yeah, it seems like the US took all of their stable coins, which sucks. But that's how it works, I guess. A couple more things. Back in March, we talked about Coinbase partnering with Fannie Mae to bring crypto-backed mortgages to the market. And they tweeted this week that the first one was funded. So that is officially now a thing. I guess it's going to continue rolling out over this summer, but the first crypto-backed mortgage in the US has happened, which is really cool. And I just saw this dropped about 30 minutes ago before the show starting, ahead of a hearing next week to discuss crypto taxation. 7 bill proposals are floating from the House Ways and Means Committee that would tackle issues on how to tax stablecoins, staking to mining, and also decrease tax demands for certain transactions. And I saw one of the examples was like when a Bitcoin miner successfully mines a block, they have to pay taxes on it immediately. And then when they go and sell it later, they have to pay taxes on it again. So it would kind of address that selling immediately or being taxed immediately kind of scenario, and a few others as well. I know there's been a lot of conversation about maybe a de minimis tax exemption. If you buy, coffee with your Bitcoin, maybe you don't have to pay taxes on it if it's below a certain dollar amount, which I think, would certainly be welcome for a lot of folks. I think the stable coins is the bigger one though. Stable coins should be $1. So in theory, you shouldn't have to be taxed on them anyway, because $1 is $1 and you're not profiting or losing on, or profiting or losing on your stable coins. But to not have to deal with like the burden of trying to prove that would certainly be welcome. But I guess that's, something that's happening, a hearing that's happening next week. So I'm sure we'll have more to talk about that next week. And I think that's wraps it up. This is going to be a rapid fire show today, just with me, short and sweet, but there's a few, I think, important stories that needed to make sure that we covered. And hopefully we will both see you all next week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Again, catch all of our episodes at goodforbitcoin.com, where we stream live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and we will see you next week. All right. Bye, everybody.